SolidNotes webinar series. What we're going to be looking at here is an introduction to custom properties, and then getting even a little more advanced with custom properties, and making sure that we can make them work in our own lives and our own companies. So make custom properties work for you. I'm Mike Towers. We'll do a little introduction here. And I'm a senior application engineer here with DesignPoint. Been here for over 3 years. I do some tech support. I teach some classes. I do pre-sales demos, EPDM implementations. So some of you may have met me or talked to me in a number of those venues. I know a lot of your names look familiar to me. And since we're in a webinar here, I was going to also introduce you to Avatar Mike Towers, who has cooler stubble and is better looking into the camera, and is an expert in all things SolidWorks. So hopefully you guys will be in good hands with the two of us as we get started here. So to get going, what are custom properties? We'll start out, like I said, fairly basic here, and then we'll get more advanced and get into some tips and tricks and that sort of thing as well as we go. So what are custom properties? Custom properties are file specific, so they can be set up on any number of files, drawing files, assembly files, part files, and the custom property values are going to be unique to each one of those files. What they can be is really whatever you need them to be for your company. So this is a way to capture information. And by the way, don't get worried that we're seeing PowerPoint here. We are going to jump into SolidWorks and see the actual demo of this stuff, but we'll kind of mix it up between the PowerPoint and the demo. So they can be whatever your company needs them to be in order to track information. We'll see how they're going to be used here as well. Custom properties are often manually typed, but they can also be linked and driven by models. They can be things like material, mass, dimensions that are linked to your model and updated off of your model. So with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at how to create some custom properties. So you know what, I'm just realizing I'm probably sharing my wrong screen. Let me share the correct screen here. Sorry about that, guys. I'm glad I picked that up before we went too far. Okay, so now you should be seeing my screen with the correct slides on it. Let's just go ahead and go back here. Again, now my humor has lost its thunder since we're going through the second time here, but there's a picture of me, there's my avatar, so we'll be looking in on you as we go here. All right, so we talked about file specific. They can be any information you want, manually typed or linked. And let's go ahead and take a look now at how we create some of these custom properties. So we'll bring up SolidWorks. And I'm just going to go ahead and open up a file out of my EPDM vault. Some of you may be familiar with EPDM and others not. We're going to go ahead and check out an assembly here. And we'll go ahead and open that assembly up. So we're going to use this set of kind of multi-tool pliers and in order to do this demonstration. And we're going to start out by adding some custom properties to the assembly, and then we'll look at also adding custom properties to some of the parts and sub-assemblies. So in order to add custom properties, and again, this is going to be fairly basic to get started, but then we'll get into some more advanced stuff as we go here. So to add our custom properties, we can either go up here to File, Properties, or we can just come up here if you've got your standard toolbar, and we can go to File Properties right here. And the Custom tab is what we're going to focus on right now. And as you hit the drop down here under Property Name, you'll typically get a list of the information or of a bunch of default custom properties. And you can see in my case, as I'm hitting that, I'm not getting anything on there. And that could happen to you as well. So I just want to take a minute and talk about why that happens. Your default custom property list is actually going to be populated off of a properties file. And so it's actually a text file that SolidWorks looks to and links to in order to populate those custom properties. The way you can make sure you've got that set up properly is going up here to your options, and we're going to go to file locations, and we'll talk about file locations in a few different aspects of this presentation. But we're going to go into the drop down, and we're going to look at our custom property files. So right now it's pointing to my desktop location, and we're just going to go ahead and reset that back to the regular location. All right, so now when I go into my custom properties, I'm going to go ahead and see that list. So on this particular assembly, let's put a description in. We'll call this a 12-in-1 hunting camping tool. And let's put a couple others in here. So that would be an example of just a manually entered custom property. If we want to do something like weight, we can choose the weight option. And rather than typing in a weight, I'm able to link that and get a number of different options that I can link that to. So we're going to link it to mass. And the unit system that you have your document set to is what this is going to show up in. So right now I'm in inches, pounds, seconds. So this is going to be 0.521 pounds. And we'll also put maybe cost is something that I'm tracking on my assemblies. So as I look at my list here, I don't have cost on my list. I do have some various cost values. I just want one called cost. So we can also just type in and set these to whatever we want them to be. So we'll make this, maybe this is $12.70. All right, so we've set up a few custom properties on the assembly. Let's set up a couple properties on a subassembly. So I've got my scissors subassembly here. And I'm getting a warning because I'm using EPDM that I don't have this file checked out. So I want to make sure I'm checking this out. Again, for some of you, that'll be normal procedure for you, and others may not be using EPDM, and that's fine. For those of you who are using EPDM, and I know there's a few of you in here, this custom property stuff obviously gets a lot deeper when we get into the EPDM level, so we're not going to go into that aspect of it in this presentation. So we've got our subassembly scissors open up here. We'll go ahead and add some more custom properties on this. And once we add a few custom properties to a few of these parts, we'll start looking at how to use them and how to do some other things with them. So this is just going to be, we'll call this stainless steel scissors. And maybe for this one, we want to put a vendor on here. Maybe we're ordering this particular component out. Okay, let's go back to our assembly. We'll open up another component. Make sure we check that out as well. And we'll put a few custom properties on here. Okay, here's another example of one that I'm going to link, like we did with weight. Material can be one that obviously you can assign your material to your parts. We can see it over here in the background that we've got a material of 316 stainless steel assigned to this particular component. So what I can do is set up a material custom property, and instead of retyping that information again, I'm just going to go ahead and link to the property material, and it's going to go ahead and read that in. So now we've got our custom property set up on that, and we'll do one more example here so we have a bunch of different things that we can work with as we keep going. Okay, and for this one we'll put a few more custom properties in. And here we're going to get a little fancier in that you can see here we have a long configuration and a short configuration. So I just want to talk about configuration-specific custom properties. If you're not familiar with this concept, if we're putting custom properties on our normal custom tab here, those are custom properties that are going to be applied to the entire part. But if you have multiple configurations, you can have different custom properties on a configuration by configuration basis. And the way we do that is simply by going over here to our configuration specific tab. When we do that, everything's the same except we get an option of which configuration we want to apply these numbers or these values to. And so what we're going to do here is set up some configuration-specific custom properties that are linked to dimensions. So let's put in a dimension, we'll call it main length. And I'm just going to click into the box, and we'll come over here, and I can double-click on a face so that I can see a dimension, and then I'm just going to select that dimension. And now we can see that it's going to evaluate to that dimension. So we'll do that there for our main length on our short configuration, and we'll do the same thing on our long configuration. And we'll link to that same dimension. And what I may also want to be able to link to some dimensions that I don't necessarily have as driving dimensions in my model. Maybe it's just other dimensions that I want to put on here. So we can always use our Smart Dimension tool and put on reference dimensions, and then we can link our custom properties to those as well. So maybe this is more of an overall dimension here, and I didn't have that as a driving dimension. So we'll just go ahead and we'll set up this sort of overall reference dimension. We'll go back into our custom properties, and we'll call this one overall length, and we'll link to that reference dimension. So I'm doing that just by clicking on the reference dimension itself. Change our configuration here to long, and we'll put that in on the long configuration as well. Okay, notice there I don't see a value that it gets evaluated to, and that's because I'm currently on the short configuration. So sometimes in order to see the actual value for something like that, we might need to just go and rebuild the configuration that we applied that to. So I'll just kind of click through my configurations, go back to my custom properties, and now as I look at my short and my long configuration, I'm going to see the values associated with those. All right, so those were just a bunch of different examples on creating some custom properties. A couple of different ways that we can do that and different information. Keep in mind it can be whatever you need it to be for your company and for what you need to track on your parts, assemblies, and drawings. So having done that, let's just jump back to our slide here a minute. So now we know how to add our custom properties. What are these custom properties used for? There's a couple of main areas where we're going to use our custom properties. One of them is bills of materials and other tables as well. Another one is for creating labels and callouts. And a third area, the third most common area is title blocks as well. So let's look at a few examples of using our custom properties in those areas. Come back here, and actually we're going to open up a drawing that I've got created. Go ahead and we'll check that out. Open it up. Oops, wrong one. Let's do that again. Just a second to check that drawing out. Okay. So here we've got a drawing with a few views of our model on it, and we're looking at a bill of material that I had already created. And notice on our bill of material, we've got a lot of blank spaces, but we've got a number of things filled out. And so what I've done here is created a bunch of columns of custom properties, and so the ones that we filled out went ahead and populated on the bill of material. It's going to happen automatically just by linking this information. And so we'll look at how to do that. Now the big idea here is, and I'll probably mention this a few times as we go, the bigger idea is that as a company, you're going to want to decide what custom properties are useful to you. What are you going to need to see on a bill of material? What are you going to want to populate a title block with or use labels for? And you're going to want to set up those custom properties as things that everybody knows that they should be populating every time that they make a part or assembly or a drawing. And we'll get into how to be more consistent with that as we go here, how to make it easier. But the idea there would be if I had done that on all my parts as I created this assembly, then my whole bill of material would be filled out rather than just having little bits of information because those are the only things that I set up on my custom properties. All right, so here we can see some of the descriptions that we put in there. We can see that vendor we put in for the scissors. Here we linked that serrated blade to the material field, so we're seeing that, and we had a finish on it. We got that overall length dimension. Now here's a good example of where it's important to be consistent with your custom properties, because back on the custom property when I created those two dimensions, I named one of them main length and the other overall length. But here on my table I've got it as general length, so it's not coming in. So let's look at how to create these fields. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that column, and we're just going to right click on the top of our bill of material. Let's pull that out of the way here a little bit. And we're going to go ahead and insert a column to the right or the left, and we'll use the custom property header, and then we'll go ahead and we'll be able to see any of those custom property fields that we set up. So we use main length here instead of general length, and now my field's going to go ahead and come in. I could have also corrected that just by going back to the custom property and changing it from main length to general length. The idea is to be consistent. So that's how our custom properties work on our bills of materials. And for those of you that went through maybe our Fundamentals 2 class, a lot of what I'm showing you so far you're gonna know from that class. It's going to be more of a review. As we go here, we'll get into some new things as well. So that's with the bills of materials. Let's go to a different tab. And here we've got a drawing view of our assembly. And here we're going to look at using custom properties as labels. And so the way we do that is we're just going to go to our annotation tab, and we'll put in a note. And we'll just go ahead and point to one of the components of this assembly. And rather than just typing in any kind of text here and labeling this thing, because I have custom properties, I can link to those custom properties. And the way that we'll do that is with this linked property box in my property manager. So I'll say link to property, and here we're going to use the component to which the annotation is attached, because we've got an annotation, we're attaching it to a component, so that's logical. And then we'll just come to our drop down, and we're going to see any of the custom properties that we've created for that particular component. So we'll link this to description, and there it goes ahead and puts it in for us. Now the nice thing about this is I can drop multiple different labels in here. I don't have to keep relinking it and resetting it up. As you hover over things, you'll kind of see the arrow snap. The description won't necessarily be right until I actually click on it and drop it. And now I can see that it's going to go ahead and show me the description for that component. Now let's add a couple more here. On this one, I never actually set up a description, so it's going to come in blank. And same with this one. What you can do is we could potentially have sort of drawing views where we're labeling things, and then we can go back and add the custom properties. But again, the idea is to be adding things consistently ahead of time so that as you do these sorts of things, the information is already there. But in this case, since it's not, let's go ahead and open up this guy right here. This is a nail file. Because I'm using EPDM, I need to make sure I'm checking my parts out as I'm working with them so that they're not read-only. And we'll add some custom property. We'll just add a custom property here for description, since that's what we're linking to. And we'll go back again. And we can see that description comes in right away because it's looking for that description custom property. So we'll do that one more time. Put a description on this guy. And now once again, when we go back to the drawing, that's going to come in for us. All right, so that's just the second example of where custom properties can be really useful, is in creating labels. Now if I make changes to my custom properties, as I'm making changes to parts, this is going to update. And if I'm being consistent in creating these when I create the parts, it makes it a lot easier when I get to the drawing to go ahead and throw things like this on here. All right, so that was bills of materials and then labels or callouts. The third thing, and this is where it maybe gets a little bit more complex, is when we get to the title block of our drawings. So let's come down here and kind of take a look at our title block. And what we see often is that people never really set up their title blocks to link to things like custom properties. And so every time you make a new drawing, you have all this information that you have to fill out. And so the beauty of custom properties with your title blocks is that this information can automatically populate your title blocks when you make the drawing. You don't have to keep filling it out. And so if we kind of look at what we've got here, we're linking to a number of different things. In this case, this cost, if you remember, we actually set that cost value up not in a particular part, but we set that up on the main assembly. So because we've dropped views of our main assembly onto this drawing, we've got it set up to look at those custom properties of that main assembly rather than in the individual parts. All right, so we've got the cost that it's linking to here. We've got that description that we put on the main assembly that's automatically coming in here. This drawing of here, that's actually not linked to a custom property. That's linked to the file name. So you can do things like that as well. As many of you know who have gone through the Fundamentals 2 class, you've gotten to see some of this already. All right, so what we want to do here is now let's create some additional custom properties on the drawing. Because so far we've created custom properties on parts and assemblies. But we can link this title block to those custom properties and custom properties from the drawing itself. So just as an example of that, if I go up here to my custom properties now that I'm in the drawing, again, I'm going to my custom tab. I'm not going to have that configuration specific tab because we can't have configurations of drawings. And so we can see that the description actually already populated. It created that custom property because it read that description off of the assembly and therefore populated in the custom properties of the drawing. But we're going to put on here a custom property for, let's see what we want to do, drawn by. And I'll just put my initials in here. And then we'll also put in here a custom property for drawn date. And then we'll put today on there. Okay, and then that was already set up to go ahead and populate here for the drawn name and date. So let's look at how we actually set these up, and it's pretty similar to what we just did with the labels. But anytime you want to be able to customize your title block to bring these custom properties in, you're going to be working in what's called the sheet format. And the sheet format is basically the part of the drawing that the title block resides in. The sheet format also dictates the size of the drawing. And right now I can't access any of this information if I try to click on it. But to be able to do that, I'm just going to right-click in the blank area of the drawing, and I'm going to edit my sheet format. Okay, now this is all alive and active, and as I hover over some of these fields that I've already got set up to be linking, you can see it says things like PRP sheet description, PRP sheet cost, and so that's kind of the syntax telling it that it's going back and looking for the particular custom property of that particular assembly. Over here it's going to look a little different. It's just PRP drawn by because it's linked to the drawing, not the assembly. Now the nice thing is you don't have to memorize what PRP means and what PRP sheet means and all those sorts of things. SolidWorks makes it a little bit easier than that to link to the things that we need to link to. So let's just say that we didn't have this field for cost on here yet. We'll go ahead and we'll delete it. This particular field here that says cost, this is just a dumb field, and so our title block is going to be made up of certain dumb text that isn't trying to link or do anything special. It's just kind of headers, and then it's going to have other information that is linked text. Give me just 1 second while I take a swig of water. And so what we're going to do is relink the cost field that we want to create here. So to do that, we're always just going to use the note, whether it's dumb text or whether it's linked. And we'll come in and we'll just drop a note in here where we want it. And the key is to come over here to this link to property in your property manager. So we come over to link to property. And when we were doing this with the labels, we did it with, we used the component to which the annotation is attached. When we're doing in our title block, we're going to use either current document or model and view specified in sheet properties. And the difference here is current document means you're going to link to a custom property that's in this drawing, like these name and date that we just created. So if I hit the drop down when I have that selected, I'll see those custom properties. If I go here to model and view specified in sheet properties, this is going to give me the ability to link to properties that are in the model. So in this case, it's an assembly. We put a drawing view of the main assembly in, so that's what we're going to link to. If you've got a bunch of different drawing views in here, maybe some are one model, one assembly, or another assembly, or a part here and a part there. It's always going to be looking for whatever the first one is that you dropped on the drawing, unless you change it. And there are ways to change it that we're not going to look at right now. So we're going to say model and view specified sheet properties, and that's just going to say we want to go out and look at that first assembly that we dropped onto this drawing. And here we're seeing those custom properties. One of them is cost. Say OK to that, and that's as simple as it is to go ahead and link those values up. So the big idea here is you can set up your title block to link to all sorts of different information that you're capturing in custom properties. And custom properties aren't the only thing you can link to. SolidWorks also has special properties built into it, things that it just knows, such as down here where I mentioned it's linking to the file name. But a lot of times custom properties are going to be used frequently on your title blocks. Now once we've kind of set our title block up the way we want and linked to the values that we want, we'll just come up here in the top right to exit out of that sheet format. And now we're back in our normal drawing. All right, so that's the process. If you're using custom properties, that's the process of being able to link those custom properties to your title block. Now there's a little more to this, because then you got to say, well, okay, I did that on just this drawing, but I want this to happen now on every time I make a new drawing. So we'll spend just a minute here talking about that. Let's go back to our PowerPoint for a second. All right, so we talked about they're used for bills of materials, they're used for labels and callouts, and then we're kind of on this title block topic. Now this is just so that you guys know that I'm watching. I can't have anybody out there sleeping, so avatar Mike is always watching. All right, so let's take a minute and look at sheet formats and templates and kind of the process that we want to go through once we have that title block set up. All right, so the first thing we're going to do once we set up our title block is we're going to save the sheet format, and we're going to clear our drawing views, and we're going to save the template. And what I'm going to show you here, see if I can bring it up for you on the right screen here. Oop, I just went past it. Bear with me just a second. Okay, so this is a document that we've created at DesignPoint that we had a lot of customers just kind of requesting this. So we're not going to spend a ton of time on this sheet formats and templates stuff because we want to focus mainly on custom properties. But what you guys can do is request this from us, and I'll put up on the PowerPoint here in a few minutes how you can request this document from us. But this is just in case you don't get everything you need on the sheet formats and templates in this presentation. This is just 10 steps you can walk through to create your sheet formats and templates and have them set up the way that you need them to be set up. All right, so let's go back here. And since I mentioned that, we'll just bring that up right here. So we haven't done this yet. I am going to go ahead and show this to you. But if you want to write down this this information in the last bullet point there, if that document's interesting to you, you can just email us at support@design-point.com and ask for our sheet formats and templates document. And that'll help you kind of go through these steps step by step. But let's go ahead and do it together. We will go ahead and bring that drawing back up here. Oops. One we want. All right, so now that we've got our title block set up the way that we want, the first step is to save the sheet format. And I'm going to do that just by going up here to File, Save Sheet Format. All right, and like I said, the sheet format is the title block. It's the size of the document. So we'll go ahead and we'll say Save Sheet Format. It's probably going to take you to whatever the default file location is for your sheet formats. We talked about file locations already a little bit. You can save it there. What I always recommend people do is save your sheet formats and your templates in some folder, either if you have PDM, put it in your vault. If you've got a server, put it on your server, somewhere that everybody can point to it and access it. And we'll look at how to do that here in a minute as well. But we're going to save this sheet format. Let's call it new title block. And I'm just going to stick mine on my desktop. Okay, now we've got that sheet format saved. But what we want to do is we want to have that sheet format associated to a particular drawing. And so the next step then would be to clear off your drawing and save the drawing template. So what we're going to do is just go ahead and delete our drawing views. Kind of clean this thing up. Get rid of our table there. And now to save the template, if I just hit save, it's going to save a drawing. I don't want to save a drawing. I want to save this as a new template that I can use over and over again. So instead of save, we'll come right next to the save button and we'll do a save as. And instead of saving it as a drawing, I want to make sure I change it to a drawing template. So again, this is all stuff that's kind of covered on that sheet, and if you have trouble remembering these steps, we can give that to you. All right, so let's call this template, we'll call it a new C size template. Saving it as a drawing template, and again, put that out on your server, in your EPDM vault, somewhere everybody can point to it. I'm just putting it on my desktop, and we'll go ahead and we'll save that. Okay, now the next important thing, we'll go ahead and we'll close that since we're done with it. If I go to create a new document now, notice I'm not seeing that template. I'm not seeing many templates here at all. And so this goes again back to that file locations that we talked about at the very beginning. So if you're not familiar with file locations, you want to get in the habit of just kind of, this is something that will be a reoccurring theme in SolidWorks. We're going to come up here to our options and our system options and go to file locations. And here we're seeing where our document templates are looking. So we have certain locations that it's looking for those document templates. And the desktop where I just created that one is not one of them. So we'll just go ahead and say add, and we can have as many of these as we want. Point to the desktop and say OK. And we'll OK out of here. And now when I go to create a new document, I'm going to have another tab, and you'll have a tab for each folder that you point to. So we'll go ahead and desktop, and there's our new C template. We can open it up, and now we're getting that title block that we just linked everything to. Now notice it's empty right now because I didn't put any views on it yet. So now when I go up here and insert a view, kind of zoomed in on it here. Let's get that out of the way. So Now when I put that view on there, my information is going to go ahead and populate. So it's populating my drawing view, but here's my custom property that I put in for description. Here's that custom property I put in for cost. Okay, so that's the big idea with linking to custom property values to your title block. Now you can go ahead and set your title blocks up, save those sheet formats, save those templates, and then you can use them over and over again. And as you're creating your custom properties and creating your drawing views, those things are going to happen automatically for you. All right, let's jump back here quickly to our PowerPoint. Okay, there's that email address again, and again, just email us support@design-point.com. Ask for the sheet formats and templates document if you want some step-by-step instructions on that stuff. All right, now we're going to get into kind of the tips and tricks section, or streamlining how we're using these custom properties. So we've seen kind of a good foundation for what custom properties are, how they can be used. Now let's look at how to be more consistent with them and how to better use them. So one thing that we can do is we can edit the default custom property list. All right, so let's take a look at what that is. Go back out to SolidWorks, and we'll just open one of our part files here. And when I go into my custom properties, remember we had already set these up, and if I was to go to set up a new one, I would see this kind of default list of information. And you might look at that and say, you know, a lot of that stuff doesn't apply to us. We don't even want it. I don't want it on the list. There's other things that I do want on the list that that aren't there. And so what you can do is come over here to your Edit List button, and we can go ahead and add new properties that are specific to your company. So maybe another one, one thing I see a lot of customers do is they have a description and then they have a description 2 that would maybe be kind of like a subline of the first description. So we can go ahead and do that. As soon as I add that using Edit List, now that's going to be the top one on my list. All right, now I can change the order of these and kind of really edit them more quickly, deleting things off of it and all those sorts of things if I go into that file that I mentioned that it points to. So remember, you can always add things very quickly and easily that way, but if we come out here and we go into our file locations again, here we were looking at document templates a minute ago. So we're going to change that drop down again and come down here to custom property files. And if I was to browse out to this location, I could open up a text document called properties, and I would see all of those default items on that list, and I could go ahead and edit them right in there. I could change the order and delete things that I don't want and all those sorts of things. So set that list up so that it works for you. And then that's going to help you be a lot more consistent as you have different members of your team using custom properties. You're going to call things the same. You're not going to have one person capitalizing and another person not capitalizing, you know, or mistype, typos, and all those sorts of things. Because remember, if it's not typed exactly right, the linking isn't going to work to the title block, to the labels, to the bill of material. So make sure you take advantage of that list. All right, so that's one option. We come back out here again, so that's the custom property, the default custom property list. Something else that you can do that maybe even goes a step further than that in helping people be quicker and more consistent in what custom properties they use is to set up part assembly and drawing templates with predefined custom properties. So this goes a little bit back to what we just spent some time on with saving those document templates. Let's jump back out here again. And what we'll do is we're just going to open a new part file. And so kind of like I did when I set up my title block and then I saved my sheet format and then I saved the document template, we can save those document templates here for our parts and our assemblies as well, and we can save them pre-populated with custom properties. So what I'm going to do here is just open a blank document, a blank part, we'll go up to my custom properties, and I'll just fill this stuff out. Maybe I want description, I want description 2, paint spec I'm putting on here, maybe I'm tracking part numbers with my custom properties. We'll link our material here, get that all preset to link even though we haven't assigned a material yet. We haven't even created the part. We could do the same thing with weight. So we kind of set up all of these things the way that we want. We'll OK that, and we'll just leave them all blank. And then instead of just hitting save, because that would only benefit me in this one particular part file, I want to save this as a template. So I'm going to come up here and say save as. And instead of a part, we're going to save this as a part template. And we'll just call it, oops, make sure you don't mess that up, part template. We'll call this part 2 template, or part template 2 would probably make more sense. And I'll stick that on my desktop, but again, you would put it in whatever folder where you're putting all your file templates and your sheet formats. And now when I go to create a new part, and I go to and use that template that I just created, and I go look at my custom properties, I've got all of them filled in. I've got all the properties set up. They just need to be filled in. They're blank right now. But that way, everybody in my company knows, okay, every time I make a new part, because my templates are all set up this way, I can see, okay, here's all the custom properties that I know we fill out. And it's a reminder, and it makes it easy for everybody to be consistent. You don't have to worry about typos or even what properties that are expected. So that can be a really useful way of getting everybody in your company on the same page and being consistent, and it's just going to flow down the line with making your bill of materials more, populated. You don't have to go back and add things later because they were put in there to begin with. Same with title blocks and annotations. Okay, so let's jump back out here a second. So the default custom property list, and setting up those templates with predefined custom properties, and we just did that on the part, but we could have done that on the assembly or the drawing and have our templates populated in all those areas. And then the last one is the property tab builder. Okay, so we're coming up to the end here. I just want to spend a couple minutes on the property tab builder. Some of you may have seen it or heard of it. Others may not know what that is. But it's another way, even maybe a little bit higher level way yet, of being more consistent and with your custom properties and making them easier to fill out. So let's look at how that custom property tab builder works. We'll jump back to our SolidWorks files here. And let's just go again to a new part. And this time, I'm just going to use a generic part template. I'm not going to use the one where I just set up those custom properties. And if you've ever noticed this little guy over here on the right, on the task pane, it says custom properties, and you click on it, and there's not much going on there. Well, this is a way you can really customize what custom properties you want to use as a company and make them easier to fill out, even than the way we just looked at. So what you would do, initially it'll come up and it'll say create now. So we'll go ahead and say that. And this is what will pop up for you. And it's just an interface that lets you sort of customize this to be what you want it to be. It's a different way of filling out your custom properties. So first you'll need a group box, and then you can put your different properties into the group box. And you can spend lots of time and make this really pretty and really neat. I'm not going to get too fancy with it, but I'll show you how it has some additional functionality. So I'm just going to drag text box into my group box here. And maybe we'll start out with a description custom property. So you can always give it a caption, and then you can link it to whatever you want that custom property to be called. In this case, we'll just pull description right off our list. Okay, down here you want to pay attention. Are we making this a configuration specific property, or are we making this just a regular custom property? And we'll stick with a regular one. So there's that one. Let's go ahead and add another text box here. And maybe we want to put material on here. So we'll call it material. We'll link to the property called material. And then for value, I can link that just like I did the other way with custom properties. I'm going to say I wanted this to look to whatever the material actually is for the part. So we'll put in there material. And maybe this group box, we'll kind of label it as part information. And I'm going to create another group box. So the group boxes are just kind of to keep sort of headers on things, keep things organized. Maybe this is going to be user information. And here we'll do a list. So you have some kind of additional functionality that you can't do the normal way with custom properties. So we'll drag this list in, and we're going to say this is going to be the author, or you could call it creator, and we're going to link it to a custom property called author. And here with a list, we can actually link that list to a text file, an Excel file, an Access database, or we can keep it basic and just go ahead and fill in options here, so you can fill in all your designers or engineers. Okay, so we created that one. We got a checkbox here. Maybe I'll put a checkbox up here in my top section. And this is going to be, maybe I do a lot of fasteners. So is this a fastener? Say question mark, and then we'll have the ability to check it or uncheck it. So it's kind of like a yes, no. And let's see, I was going to do one more under user. Oh, I know what I was going to do. Let's put another list in here. And make this created date. And we'll choose one of our fields that makes sense for that. I'm going to use drawn by or drawn date, but we could just make this our own. We'll just call it created date. Oh, and I made that a list, and I didn't intend to do that. Let me redo that a second. I'm going to make this a text box. Call it created date, make the custom property created date. And here we have the ability to do things like date or yes, no. So we'll make it date. All right, so we get all this set up, and you could make this as fancy and complex as you want. We have radio buttons down here that we didn't use. But we'll go ahead and we'll say save. And I'm going to save it again on my desktop. And this is specific to part files. So you can create one of these for your part files. You can create one for your assemblies. You can create one for your drawings. But this one is particularly for our part files. And we know that because we started out with a new part. So you would just start out with a new assembly or a new drawing. So we've gone ahead and we've got it saved. And now what we'll do is make a, well, actually now again, we want to pay attention to our file locations. So I probably want to put that in the same location as the properties file for my list, the default list that we talked about earlier, because what I need to do is come up here to my file locations and go to my custom property files. And you can only have one of these, so I'm going to delete the existing one, and I'm going to add my desktop where I just saved that to. So again, this would be something you would want to save in your EPDM vault or on your server, somewhere that everybody has access to it and everybody can point their file locations to it so that everybody's on the same page in your company. Everybody has the same custom properties to fill out. And we'll go ahead and OK that. And now when we make a new part file, and we come over here to our custom properties, we're going to see it's picking up that tab builder file that we just created. Now the cool thing here is I don't have to come up here to my custom properties, and because of the way I filled some of these out, it makes it maybe a little faster and easier to fill out than doing it up the normal way. So we could put in here a description. So in this case, maybe I'm making a fastener. Okay, this is kind of cool. Since I linked it to material, I can come in here and hit the drop down, and I can click on edit material and say yes to that, and then I can go ahead and choose my material. So maybe this is going to be cast stainless steel. Okay, fastener, we'll go ahead and we'll check that box. Author, I'll choose myself. Created date, since I set it as a date field, it's actually giving me kind of that calendar format that makes it a little bit easier to pick the date. Okay. So then once we're happy with all that, we're just going to say apply. And now if we go up here to our normal custom properties location, you can see that it went ahead and filled all those things in. All right, so those are just a couple of different methods, kind of tips and tricks on doing some of this stuff a little bit faster. The big idea is make sure your whole company's on the same page. You know, use some of these tools to get everybody filling out the same consistent custom properties so that you can take advantage of them in your bills of materials, in your labels, and on your title blocks. All right, so that's what I've got. We ran just a little bit over on time. I apologize for that. Looks like a lot of you were in here and stuck with me through it. I'm going to stick around for a little bit. If you have time yet and you want to ask any questions, feel free to go ahead and type your questions in the questions box, and I'll see if there's things that I can answer for you, or some of it I may get back to you